All right, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, whenever you are. Thank you for joining us. This is Asian Highway 1. AH1 presents The Asian Highway, Storytellers in Action. Thank you for joining us in week 4 of our podcast, season 1. We are coming to you from Visual Communications in Little Tokyo. Today's storyteller is Siyou Tan, a Hollywood filmmaker by way of Singapore. We'll introduce her in a few minutes. We want to get to a quick chit-chat among my other two co-hosts here, Mr. Debesh and Ms. Mehta. I'm going to set you up here, Debesh, in a minute. There's some big news that came out of Bollywood, and for those of you who don't know, one of the biggest exports out of Asia is Indian cinema and Bollywood, which is Hindi film. And we lost one of our legends, one of our icons in the industry, by the name of Sri Devi. She was 54 years old at the time of passing, died at a hotel in Dubai. She was only 54, like I said. Sent shockwaves across the world. Bollywood fans everywhere are heartbroken. And I want to kind of bring in our in-house Bollywood expert here to kind of share some thoughts about what the passing meant to him, and kind of how it's not just a passing, it's actually something more significant than that, right?
Absolutely, Parimal. So like Parimal was saying, it has been a very tough week with the waves caused by the untimely passing of Sri Devi. And even though she was a Bollywood icon, even going beyond that, she was a true storyteller in action for Bollywood before that tagline came together for us. And, you know, her film career started in the late 70s, early 80s. What was really interesting about her is that she was this very dynamic artist. And in a time in the 80s where you had Bollywood, where it was a tremendously male-dominated industry, where it was only male leads who could carry films, Sri Devi was able to establish herself through her storytelling abilities, through her acting, her dancing, even to some degree singing, her sort of variety of craft. And so by doing so, she was able to establish that a female lead in Bollywood could carry an entire film, just by doing what she normally had with her talent-wise. And so that's something that was really remarkable. And what really tied all of it together is not just the fact that her craft, she was so dynamic, but that she inspired so many people by her establishing that forefront of being able to be a female lead that can carry a film, that not only allowed the current stretch of Bollywood actresses to be able to take on similar such roles, to open the door for them, but it also connected with the everyday person, whether you were a man or a woman. You see someone who came onto the screen, and in most films, she portrayed someone who was very relatable, whether it was in her earlier years, a 20-something that was aspiring for greatness, much as most of us have done in our 20s, among a whole variety of films. So she was able to really bring people together to the table by just being a very relatable character. And so it's not just the passing of a Bollywood icon, but it's the passing of a storyteller in action that really did thread the needle, not just for her fellow actresses, but also for the common people.
And on that note, I think it's fair to say that when she came onto the scene in Bollywood, actresses on screen were quite one-dimensional.
Yes,
and she was able to break that mold. And younger women, I would say that younger women were able to look up to her and say, "I don't have to be what Bollywood says this one thread of women have to be. I could be this. I could be that." I would say it's a pretty fair representation of what Sri Devi represented, right?
Absolutely. She showed that you could break the mold that had been established up to that point, and you could be more than what society told you that you could be.
Well, it's a sad day in Bollywood that we've lost such an icon. But I'm sure there'll be other people who step up in her place, and could also be a breakthrough in terms of representing a certain personality on the screen and give people hope for the future.
Absolutely.
On a lighter note, speaking of hope, I almost lost hope a couple days ago. I was having lunch in Orange County, and it was at a Mexican restaurant. I'm sitting in the bar area. And on TV is the Winter Olympics in South Korea. And I overhear a guy behind me talking about the Winter Olympics in Asia. And he says, he's saying how he couldn't understand why the Winter Olympics in China are associated. He just couldn't figure that out for some reason. And I'm sitting there thinking, the Winter Olympics are in South Korea. They're in China, right? That's my first thought, right? And then he goes, does China even have a ski lift? Right? That was his next statement. And then he's like, yeah, you know what? I understand the Winter Olympics are in Switzerland or Denver or even New Zealand, but what's China got to do with it? And just quick question to both of you guys. If you were in that situation, what would you just, I didn't get a chance to say anything because he left a minute later. What would you guys have done in the same situation?
Well, I lived in Middle America for a while, and so I have empathy for people who are not necessarily educated on such things in life. In fact, over the weekend, a friend from college was in town, and I decided to take her on a tour of Little Tokyo. And we had a few Scoopy snacks, and then we ventured into the Japanese supermarket and bought a lot of candy. And it was really confusing because, if you're not familiar with Japanese culture and Japanese supermarketing, there's a lot of packaging. There are all sorts of very interesting looking things that are packaged. And even though I grew up in Japan, I forgot what it was like to open some of the things. We went to eat shabu shabu. I got confused even though I've had shabu shabu before. So I'm forgiving of such individuals who don't realize that there's a difference between A, China and Korea, B, that there's snow in that part of the world. But I think that's the purpose of our podcast is to
exactly. No, I
absolutely
100% agree. I 100%
tell
agree.
people. But I would have just laughed at them, and actually.
Oh, I was laughing. I was definitely laughing in my head.
I would be snickering quite a bit, I think. Yeah.
But one person we are not snickering at, and we are totally appreciating for some of the work she's been doing is Siyou Tan. She's a filmmaker who's landed a very important position, so to speak, with the American Film Institute. So we're going to talk to her about it in a minute. But hey, let's welcome Siyou. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing great. So I think this is a great transition to you because you and I have even talked about distinguishing between different Asian groups and how some people get left out, even amongst us.
Yeah. I get that a lot. Yeah,
right?
People always ask, which part of China are you from? I say, I'm not from China.
That's the part I'm from, not from China.
Yeah, but which part? I say, I'm from Southeast Asia.
Okay, so we're gonna hand you off to the first question, which will be from Medha. So why don't we get a little background on Siyou here?
Yeah, I'm actually very interested in finding out more about you because I've spent time in Singapore and China. But what I love about your story is you were a bartender once upon a time, and you have bartended your way across Asia, which only Australians I know have done that before, let alone a Southeast Asian woman.
That's a very specific demographic there.
I always see Australians like in Thailand and various other places bartending their way across that part of the world, but not a Southeast Asian woman. So I'd love to hear your story on how that happened and how filmmaking and storytelling sort of happens side by side with that.
Yeah, it's just 1,000 Australians and me. So, I went into bartending because I've always liked working in F&B, food and beverage, but I was a really shitty hostess. I would pull the chairs out and people would fall down. I was really bad and I was a really bad server. So I was like, let me just try bartending. It's fast-paced, you do all these things. So I did that, and I did that when I took time off from college to think about whether I really want to do film. So film and bartending is great because bartending actually taught me a lot about how to survive on set because the hours are long. Basically, the club that I worked at was like a 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. kind of thing. So you're on your feet for 12 hours. It's very physical. Yeah. And I start off as a bar back. So I had to carry 40 kilograms of ice up and down the stairs, juice. You have to clean glasses. It's kind of crazy. Wow. So that prepared me for film production. Mm-hmm. And the other thing is also you really get to observe people. So I like that. And, I think in a club setting, people are trying to impress. But as the night goes on, alcohol sort of loosens that up. And, you kind of get to see whoa.
Yeah.
That girl. And it was not, it's just, and then it was a lot of adventure. So I had to, because I was the only female bartender, some of my duties included going to the toilet and carrying the drunk girls out because there were no female bouncers.
That was all on you.
Yeah, I had to carry a lot of people out.
Wow.
angrily.
Wow,
Wow.
that's pretty awesome. So, to kind of piggyback off of that, so during your time bartending, obviously you said you've seen and apparently you've carried all kinds of people. So through the course of that, though, I'm certain that you obviously heard a lot of people's stories, and obviously you're a storyteller. So what kind of insights did you get, in those, infinite number of conversations you might have had with, all these customers that came through?
Yeah, I think it's a good balance between, because I was working at a bar setting, there's really a lot more time and just the setting is a bit more slow paced. People come here and get a beer, you can talk to them. So those, I hear stories. I hear all sorts of stories about how Singapore was like in the 60s, travels. But I think in a club setting where I was at, it's more like observing people. And because people keep coming back to the bar, you see them leave and come back. They come back to the bar to wait for someone. Someone doesn't come back. So it's more people watching, I think, and that was very interesting to me. And also how people treat you as a bartender. They kind of, sometimes they look down on you, or maybe they're trying to impress you, or sometimes people don't have people to talk to, so they come and talk to you. So it's really just like a whole array of people, men, women, everything. And I think the root of it is just the human, just like at the end of the night, what do humans want and what do humans do to get what they want? So it's very super interesting.
That's very fascinating.
I was going to say, is there any particular stories stand out, or is there
I'm
maybe
not going to say on air.
This is somewhat child friendly.
that way we know a lot went down then, huh?
Right. So, okay, well, to skirt away from some of the more sketchy stories, then I would like to ask you about another story, one that, in fact, that you created last year called 2200 Volts. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. 2200 Volts is a love story between two women. And it sort of explores what do you do when, you're in a self-destructive relationship and there's this connection and, so the story goes, one ends up there and the other one on the electric chair.
Oh.
Wow.
Yikes.
Not fun.
I did notice that there was a very piano-oriented score in the film. Obviously music can be very important in storytelling. So, how do you use music to enhance the story that you're telling?
Music. Oh, I love music. I think music is really a complement to the emotions of the scene or of the film. I think there's always like a musical motif throughout. I used the piano because I wanted it to be a little more. There was very little dialogue in the film, so I also wanted to keep things very minimal and not just go in with like lots of strings and all that kind of stuff. So I wanted it to be kind of gentle, feminine. So piano was like a natural fit to that. And I think a lot of the filmmakers I admire, they use music in very clever ways to sort of tease out cultural, like how they use music to make you think, remind you of certain moods and times. Like, for example, like Wong Kar-wai uses music to evoke, like, certain parts of the world, Latin America and all these kind of things. So I think music is really a way to lift up the narrative and to just like augment the emotions of the scenes. Yeah, that's how I think about music.
Can I piggyback on that?
Yeah.
Do you have a mood, not just to the music you want, but also to your writing and to your storytelling? Like, what is the mood and the pace of the stories you like to tell?
Big question. The mood and the pace of the stories I want to tell, I think it's sort of hazy. The only word I can give is hazy. It's sort of like, it just, because I'm here in the States and I always think about home, which is Singapore, and I think of the rain and I think of the humidity and I think of how you see things and it's like raining and you can't really see things properly. So that's kind of the mood, hazy.
Yeah, I think that's actually a good.
That's a very interesting way to explain it. I do understand about Singapore. I remember as a kid going to Singapore, coming outside, it's like, felt like a whole bottle of Vaseline fell on my face because of the humidity. It just
yeah. You just like you take a shower and you come out and there's no point.
But there's still something so charming about Singapore. But yeah,
it is.
I'm actually craving a Singapore sling. What's the hotel you can get it at?
Raffles.
Yes,
Raffles Hotel. I actually can make a pretty good Singapore sling.
Ooh, I'm going to take you up on that. But this imagery actually makes me miss Singapore a tiny bit. But there's a reason why I personally moved to the States. What drew you here as an artist? You could have gone to Europe, you could have gone to Canada, you could have gone to Australia with all the bartenders. What was it about America that you said, this is where I'm going to be?
Big question. You know, when I first came here, I didn't really think too much about it. The only thing I thought about was that I wanted to come to America because I wanted a liberal arts education. Because at like 17, 18, you know, I was a late bloomer, so I wasn't very sure what I wanted to do in life. So I wanted to explore and have like something more general and then specialize. Whereas for other countries, you kind of have to like say, I want to do this, law, medicine, something. So that's the draw to America. And coming here, I found the freedom, which is really a word that's like overused, but the freedom, I think America really has freedom, and it's not just like freedom in whatever amendment, it's like freedom of thought. And I think that leads to this diversity, which is another shitty word that everybody overuses, but yeah, especially like in a racial context, but diversity, there's just so many types of people in America, and you can really be who you want to be, who you are, you can express yourself. So I think that's a big draw for me. And also I think of like America as possibility. You know, you can fail, you can try something, you can not succeed, you can try again. There's really just like a lot of this sense of like just, you know, innovation, possibility, and just do it. There's no shame in trying and not getting what you want the first time.
Sure. So I'm going to kind of delve a little bit more on that from a cost perspective. I mean, you get your freedom and your diversity, but did that come at a cost, specifically in the family context? Because you came here, I'm assuming you came here alone.
Yeah, I did.
And I know I could speak for Debesh here that both of us were born here, so we don't quite get the experience of sacrificing family at home to come here and be alone. So what was the price you paid on that end? What were the things you lost back home that you just couldn't replicate over here?
Oh, I'm gonna start crying maybe. No, but my family.
We'll get some tissues, no problem.
Oh, let's pause. No, I have a great family. You know, I have 3 sisters and my parents, and being far away from them is actually really hard because I missed out on so many things in their lives. For example, my sisters' graduations, starting their first jobs, changing jobs, everything, friends and everything, and weddings. I missed out on so many big important events in my life just being here. And sometimes, you know, there's just all this guilt that settles like, this is so selfish of me, I'm trying to do this crazy thing, and at the expense of what? Like, is it all worth it? So I think about these things a lot. But you know, thank goodness for FaceTime and Skype, and I have a regular Skype with my sisters. And one of those things that's kind of cliche, like absence makes the heart grow fonder, but I definitely have a much stronger relationship with my family because I'm away. I think when you all live under the same roof, you know, you tend to take things for granted. You tend to just assume that someone's always going to be there all the time. But now being far away, I put in a lot of effort to kind of connect with them and keep checking in and making sure that keep talking to them. So that's the good part. But, you know, it's like, for example, when my grandmother passed away, I couldn't go back. The flight's like 30 hours and I couldn't leave because of visa. So there's all these like practical, logistical things that...
Yeah, and I just think that's something that's so hard for people like us to, like, we're so close to, like, I know you and me were so close to our families. Right. But there's, you know, Medha's here on her own, and I mean, you're here on your own. It's just, and I think sometimes that story kind of gets lost in our own dialogues here in this country. So, so it's great to see that you're enduring though. So, you know, it's great to keep going forward despite all the costs. I want to switch gears a little bit. Something you and I talked about off air was the lack of distinction sometimes between different Asian communities. It's a common misperception. We talked about this even at the top of this episode, how sometimes people don't even know the different kinds of Asians that exist. Or when they think of Asian, they think Chinese, Japanese, Korean, and that's it, without realizing there's a much broader diaspora. Right, exactly, right? Kazakhstan, India, Singapore. I mean, it's all over the place, right? So I guess if you could kind of, what do you think is the best way for us to get that message out there, or talk to people about, hey, don't forget about us? Is it more dialogue amongst each other cultures? You know, do we cross over to other communities? Where's the path for us to walk to let people know, hey, it's not just Chinese, Japanese, Korean, they're Singaporean, Indian, and so on?
Big questions. I think, the first thing that popped into my mind was when I first saw Ali Wong's thing on Netflix, and she was talking about the different types of Asians and how she's Vietnamese and her husband's Japanese. And there's like the fancy Asians, which is like East Asia, and then there's like the jungle Asians, which is like us. We live from the tropics and we don't wear clothes or something. So that, I think for me as a storyteller, what I'm trying to do is just tell my stories and try to make sure that they are told authentically from where I'm from. And then so I think it's not that people don't want to know, it's just they don't have opportunities to be exposed to these things. So, I mean, it's also confusing to people because I'm ethnically Chinese. So therefore people are always confused, oh, you're from China, or maybe they just think I'm Japanese or Korean or something East Asian. But I don't know. I think it's just, you just keep doing things and you just one step at a time. Okay. For me, it's just making content and making content from a Southeast Asian / Singaporean point of view.
Well, actually, talking about that, we have yet to mention the fact that you have recently joined a very, very prestigious group of women who are participating in the AFI. What is it actually called?
AFI Directing Workshop for Women.
Yes.
The mouthful.
Yes. And you're with a great group of women. You're with women from all over the world, including Zoe Bell, who's Uma Thurman's stunt double, an Iranian filmmaker, all sorts of people. So can you tell us a little bit about your thesis film and what you hope to achieve from this whole program?
Yeah, the program is great and the women are great and I'm very excited to be part of it. The film that I'm going to make in there is actually linked to a question that was asked earlier. I'm making a film about a little girl who is unable to go for her grandmother's funeral and then so searches for her grandmother, Ama's departed soul, and she finds it in a pet turtle. So that's the story I'm trying to tell. And it's obviously inspired by true events. Like 5 years ago, my grandma passed away. I couldn't go. And in these 5 years, I've just felt very guilty. And, being so far away from home, my grandmother raised me. So she's kind of like my mom. And then so coming here for college, I just missed the last few years of her life. Every time I went back, she, you can just see her shrinking and shrinking. And sometimes she just forgot who I was. And that was heartbreaking. Yeah. And then the last time I saw her was when she was so small. It was sad. So I think that guilt kind of stayed with me all these years. And I've kept trying to write different things. But I just kept returning to this one feeling of wanting to bring my grandma back to life. And then so I'm trying to take the good out of this shitty situation and make it something light and fun and a movie to sort of, it's like a love letter to her.
And you're getting a turtle for the cause too.
I like turtles.
So I have to throw this in. Is the turtle a symbol of hiding in a shell maybe?
Oh, didn't think about that.
Maybe she likes Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Maybe she does. Maybe she does. I don't know.
Who knows? I mean,
came to me in a dream.
Well, can we ask her that?
Yeah.
Do you like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles?
They're great.
Who's your favorite Ninja Turtle? Follow-up question.
Can I change to Powerpuff Girls?
Sure.
You can do whatever you like. Absolutely.
I don't remember which my favorite Ninja Turtle is.
I don't remember their names.
None of them
I forgot.
So they were Leonardo, Raphael, Michelangelo, and Donatello.
And Splinter, who was the mouse.
He was the sensei of them.
I see.
And who could forget
Shredder?
Yep.
All right. Walk down memory lane. So Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles being a show for children, to piggyback on the children aspect, you have done some work at 826 National, which is an after-school tutoring center. And your focus has been really with children and teens between the ages of 6 and 18 and who are under-resourced and, really kind of giving them opportunities to explore their creativity in writing. So what kind of inspired you or drew you to do something like that?
Oh, lots. I think, there's a lot. So my first foray into education being a teacher was when I was in Singapore before I came to the States. I taught history to secondary 2, which is like 14-year-olds, boys. It was a boys' school. And I never really thought about being a teacher before. I was just kind of thrown into it. But I really, really enjoyed it. I like sharing information, and there's like the discipline part, and I think children have a spark before you get like bogged down by things like adult responsibilities
By life.
Yeah, but, yeah, all of us. But there's just this like carefree nature to this age of like 9 to 15 that I was so like, wow, it just brought me back. But 826 National is amazing. I first encountered them through my company. We did a film with them, and I was so drawn to their model of education because it's unlike anything. I mean, I grew up in Singapore where the education is, people call it rote learning, but it's very rigid. You kind of memorize things, and it's like the opposite of 826 National. So when I had the chance now with more time, I volunteer with them. And I like it because most of their students are, minorities, people that don't maybe they struggle with English. And I think using writing and creativity and sort of telling stories is just a way for you to get you interested in the language. And it's super fun. We go to 3 hours, the kids kind of write a story together, and then they publish it. And then they all bring a book home, and then there's illustrations, and sometimes they have it in the library. So I think I'm really just drawn to this kind of education, maybe because I didn't have it in Singapore. So now that I have the chance to be like a teacher, I'm also learning from the whole process.
Do they ever write about the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles? Or?
Actually, that came up before. Yeah, it came up before. A lot of superheroes.
I do want to piggyback on the word education, because one thing that we hear a lot here at the States nowadays is education is more than going to school. Right. I mean, I could tell you countless people I personally know, and I can even say this about me, that just because you have a piece of paper doesn't mean you're educated. All right. So I guess my question to you is, what do you look at as the word education? Like, because there's multiple ways to be educated, right? You don't have to have a piece of paper to say you're educated, right? So I was kind of curious, how would you phrase what being educated is? And if you could think of this kind of more holistic, kind of humanistic way.
Education. Well, I certainly don't think that education is a piece of paper. I think it's it's your mindset. It's whether you are open to learning or not. I know a lot of people that don't have formal education, but they are street smart and wise, and it's like every single encounter that you have, do you learn something from it? Are you open? Basically, are you porous to these new things around you and like challenges? There's all sorts of education, life skills. Like, for example, maybe you are in a job that it's really demanding and very difficult and challenging, but are you educating yourself? Are you learning from it, or are you not? So I really think it's like a mindset kind of thing. Because I know also a lot of people that have gotten higher degrees and they are not as open to these things as other people are.
Or I can even tell you from my perspective, I have 2 bachelor's degrees, a law degree, and a master's degree, and I don't use any of it. I've learned more in my 15 years after school than I had in my 15 years in school.
Yeah, same. I mean, I'm in the same boat. I have a doctorate, a master's, and a bachelor's, but I think I learned more in the process of getting those degrees. Than
even after.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? Yeah, I've learned more after school than I have in school.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I really think you learn a lot from the people you meet. You just have to be open. Just be open. I also learn a lot from bartending. I learn a lot in all sorts of environments that are not typical educational places.
Yeah. Well, Mel's got a question she's going to ask as a follow-up to that.
Well, you were talking about the beauty of the American education system in terms of the liberal arts aspect, having experienced the education system in Asia, having been a bartender, now a storyteller. What would you take from the Asian experience of education that you think would be helpful to bring to the American setup or American ecosystem?
Well, I can't say for sure because I didn't come to America for pre-college education. But what has my East meets West version of education is that in Singapore, there's a lot of discipline. Like, discipline is just drilled into you. You have to do your homework, you have to do this, you have to do that, and you just have to, I was going to curse, but I didn't. You have to just practice. Like, for example, I'm not very naturally good at mathematics, but, you just practice. There's this thing we do called 10-year series. So it's 10 years worth of O-level questions, and you just go to that book and you answer every single question. So I think there is, discipline is good. A rigid, structured education is actually really good. I'm not exactly sure what pre-college is like here,
It's not
It's
rigid
not like that.
discipline.
It's not rigid.
It's not rigid.
Fast times in Richmond High. That's what it is.
That's a good indication.
It's
Actually, I
quite
didn't go to
different,
high school here. That's what I imagined it to be.
Debish and I went to high school here, and
Yeah.
it was not
And not-
rigid and disciplined.
No, it's
Not
quite
at
the
all.
opposite.
Oh, I
Yeah,
see.
it's
So
do whatever you want to do. Be open. We're gonna do this now, or we're gonna. I'm exaggerating.
Yeah.
but-
Our
Yeah.
idea of high school rigidity is making sure we don't skip out of class so we don't end up in detention.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean,
yeah.
same-
We got demerits.
Demerits.
That was
Yeah.
what we got.
Demerits were horrible. Yeah.
I got demerits too. Yeah, but I think a middle ground. I think a little bit of discipline, but for me, it's like the grass is greener, right? I'm so attracted to this. Like, do whatever you want, follow your passion. You love something, you go do it.
Yeah, and it's fun, it's crazy because that's kind of the narrative. It's kind of for at least people like us who grew up here. That narrative is almost backfiring because it's
Yeah.
like, oh, these kids now go to school. They don't know what they want to do. They're majoring in underwater basket weaving, and how's that going to help the country get better? It's like you hear that narrative now.
Basket weaving is underappreciated. I
Oh,
think.
I'm sure it is.
I want
saying.
to learn how to weave a basket.
I'm saying.
Underwater.
I'm
Like,
no.
Imagine going to a party and saying, you know what? Amongst my repertoire, I can weave a basket.
Underwater.
How
Underwater.
fast? How fast can you weave a basket?
Oh well, then you're going into different territory. That's
right.
just yeah.
That's his basic way of saying he takes a long time.
Yeah, maybe. One thing I wanted to ask, as a storyteller, we talked about some of your films and some of the works that you've done. What drew you to telling stories through film? I know you worked in a bookstore, I believe,
My mom's.
in your mom's bookstore, and you have a love for music. But what drew you to film as your vehicle for storytelling?
Yeah, I came to film a little later than a lot of people. I think with my friends here, I think in general people watch a lot of movies in America. In Singapore, because our theaters don't carry that many movies,
Yeah.
I came into it first by way of like oral tradition. My grandmother told me a lot of stories of how she was purged from the Cultural Revolution and all this kind of stuff. Basically, her life story. And I like to listen to all sorts of old people's life stories. So it's an oral tradition. And then I love books. I love to read. I grew up at my mom's bookstore. So that's fiction and books kind of really drew me into like the world of imagination and storytelling. And then so when I came to the States, I started exploring film as sort of like a visual medium that was very attractive to me. And then I did printmaking. And that kind of forced me to tell stories in more like a visual way, because you have one chance with an image to tell a story. So I
Yeah.
think that kind of training was all kind of good. And then film, I think it's for me the most attractive medium because it's the layers of things. It's a layered approach to like a visual, a sound, editing, which is like putting things in order, music and like dialogue and like people's faces or not faces, landscape, So it's just, I think it's super interesting and it's very universal. You could just show somebody something on YouTube, turn the volume down, the message will be conveyed.
Right.
The
Yeah.
emotion of the whatever it is kind of conveyed. So I think that's why film is the most attractive medium to me.
Okay, I'm going to finish with two questions here. First, this is the we talked about in our banter, about 20 minutes ago. I mentioned how I was in a restaurant and I overheard a conversation. When you're in a situation where you come across somebody who is different from you on multiple layers, they're politically opposite of you, they're socially opposite of you, just where they are in their life doesn't at all mix with who you are. And you want to have a conversation with them, you want to tell their story, you want to relate to their story. How do you handle that? What's your way of kind of connecting with somebody who isn't like you, but there's still a human connection somewhere?
Right.
How would you go about finding that?
I'm going to assume they're not attacking me.
Right. Yeah. You're sitting down and
They're just sitting down at a bar or something.
Yeah, and you want to meet this person, but they're different from you.
Oh, lots of, I think my approach to that is just asking a lot of questions and listening. So you ask questions and you listen and people share. And I think people get defensive maybe because you're different. Like I look very different. I speak different. So people are first of all just like, oh, who's this foreign object,
Yeah.
So, when there's like a foreign object in the room, you're scared, right? So
Right.
first of all, I have to lower the defenses. You ask a lot of questions. You try to get to know them as a person. What is important to them? Maybe family, maybe a career, maybe something, maybe their dog or something. What makes them tick? What makes them care about something? So I think first of all, just asking questions, trying to get to know each other, and then sharing. And then I think once everybody establishes that we are actually just the same,
Yeah.
Humans are just actually the same.
Sure.
Regardless of political ideology or what you believe in, social class, all these things, we're just the same.
Right.
Yeah.
So let's piggyback on that. One thing you mentioned earlier was about you've done some volunteering work. You know, you've been in the education field. There are a lot of people who, when they see negativity in the news, be it a school shooting or this or that, and they feel helpless and they want to do something, but they don't know how. I think sometimes we look at doing stuff in the world or helping out, and like we got to do something big. What do you think are like little actions we could take that may seem like minuscule, but they actually have big results? Or what kind of action could, like, if I want to do something, you want to do something, what are some ways we can act that may not seem big, but actually are big? I mean, do you have a take on that?
My take on that, I think just do what you can. I think do what you can, but also have, wow, this is so cliche, but like the human touch, which is why I like volunteering, because you are like human to human helping somebody. You could donate money, but for me, I don't know where that goes. I think it's really, just trying to be compassionate to other people, whether it's your friends, people you meet, people in the elevator, people at the shopping line that's all driving in LA, right? If someone's cutting you off, the first thing is, this person, right?
Yeah.
But for me, I just try and think, okay, maybe this person is really trying to rush to get somewhere. Someone's pregnant and they're gonna give birth. Okay,
right.
I'll let you in. I won't be angry with you.
Yeah.
So I think for me, the first step is just to check yourself, and then when you can help people, but also try to do it in a way where it's direct, like volunteering, and just. Yeah.
Is there a cause or an organization that you like to suggest someone if they want to do something, anything you have that you worked with?
Well, 826 LA is great. I highly recommend if you like working with kids and if you believe in education and writing and creativity, and if you like volunteering at a fantastic place, 826 LA is so amazing.
Is there a website you could suggest or people go to?
826national.com?
826national.com.
Yeah, I'll just search 826 LA.
Okay. We have one more question, I guess, from Meda.
Yeah. As a filmmaker, I'm wondering about the use of virtual reality to, enhance that human touch that you were talking about. So in the grand scheme of things, can virtual reality really help, first of all, entertain, and secondly, build community at the same time, more so than traditional 2D media?
That's a tough one. I think, first of all, building community is so difficult.
Yeah.
It's very, very difficult. And, I forgot to say this, but part of the reason why I like and have stayed in America for a long time is because of the community here. I think as an artist, I find it's a little isolating. You're just like trying to trudge through and do your work. But in America or in LA, there are fellow filmmakers and artists that are also trying to do the same thing. So you build your own community, but that onus is on you. In terms of virtual reality, I did hear of an exhibition at LACMA where they kind of put you in the virtual reality of the wall, and you go through the thing and you get detained, and they make you do the thing where you are like detained. So it's very immersive, and you imagine all these things, and you go into a room by yourself. Whether or not that's building community, I'm not sure, but that's definitely putting you in the shoes of the person who's going through this trying to cross the wall thing, and it's building empathy, which I think is first step to building community.
Yeah, I was just going to say exactly that.
Yeah. So I think virtual reality is a way for you to experience something that you will never be able to experience being you.
Right.
And then so possibly the leap from that is that, okay, I understand what this person is going through, so, I'm going to try to be more understanding.
Excellent.
We've come a long way from smell-o-vision even.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Back, I think it was the 60s.
Yeah.
Where some
Smell-o-vision,
films,
wow.
they would give you a smell card and they would pop up a number. And depending on whatever number it is, it would correspond to a certain scratch and sniff, and you would smell it, so you could smell what
it's
the
on TV. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
It's on TV.
So so this is a way huge upgrade.
I mean, 50 years, a lot of change.
Yeah, quite a bit. So
All right. Well, Siyou, this has been a great chat. We learned a lot from talking with you, so thanks so much. Can you tell us where to find you? Do you have a website? Do you have a Twitter handle? Do you have a Facebook? Where can we find you?
You can find me on the internet. You can find me on the internet. My website is tansiyoU.com. Instagram, Facebook, email, hit me up.
Okay. And Can you spell your name so people could find you?
Oh, T for Tennessee, A, N for Nancy, S, I for Indigo, Y for Yellow, O, U.
Okay.
And CU.
Got it.
Yeah.
And you could also find us, and we could continue the conversation on our Twitter and our Facebook. You could find Asian Highway 1 on Facebook. Just type in Asian Highway 1. Find our page and like it. And you'll find us on Twitter. Our handle is AH1Live. You'll find us on Instagram. Our handle there is also AH1Live. And by all means, feel free to email us, asian.highway.live@gmail.com.
And you can definitely find this story and others on iTunes, Google Play Music, Spotify, and YouTube.
I also want to give a couple of thank yous. As always, it's great to be here at Visual Communications. So thank you to the team here. Thank you to Marvin UF for always being a great producer here. You've been a godsend for us, Marvin. So thank you for everything so far. I want to give a quick plug for Allegiant, which is opening now. Mela, do you know anything about Allegiant's schedule or time? I think it goes now through April 1st, I believe.
Yeah, I've actually watched it, and it's a very interesting take on the experience of being in a Japanese internment camp during World War II. And George Takei is one of the stars of the show, and he's amazing in it. So I'd highly recommend a watch.
I'm sure you can just Google Allegiant, and you'll find all the information about that. You can just do Allegiant George Takei. That should be enough for a Google search. Next week's guest will be Annie Zonefeld. We'll have a good chat with her. And on behalf of Marvin and Siyou and Meda and Debesh, this is Pimo. It's been great talking to you.
Be good, y'all.
Be good, y'all. Thank you.